Ethan's day had been a whirlwind of meetings, deadlines, and a late client dinner. Exhausted but content, he pulled into the driveway of his suburban home, eager to unwind. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard, 10:47 p.m., and smiled, imagining his wife, Clara, waiting for him with her usual warmth and a cup of tea. But as he stepped inside, the house was eerily quiet. "Clara," he called out, his voice echoing through the stillness. No response. The silence unnerved him, and the faint glow from their bedroom upstairs caught his attention. Ethan climbed the stairs, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. As he reached the top, he paused, hearing hushed voices and muffled laughter. The sound hit him like a punch to the gut. His heart pounded as he pushed the bedroom door open. The scene before him was one he would never forget. Clara, his wife of 9 years, was wrapped in the arms of another man. A man Ethan recognized all too well. It was Michael, a close friend who had been at their home countless times, sharing dinners and celebrations. "Ethan," Clara gasped, scrambling to cover herself. Michael's face turned pale, his hands raised in a feeble attempt to justify the unforgivable. "Ethan, I can explain." "Don't," Ethan interrupted, his voice low and trembling with restrained fury. "Don't even try." The fallout. Ethan left the room without another word, his mind racing as he stumbled out of the house and into the cold night. He couldn't process the betrayal, Clara, the woman he had loved and trusted, and Michael, the friend he had considered family. Sitting in his car, he replayed the moment over and over, anger bubbling beneath the surface. He gripped the steering wheel, fighting the urge to drive back and confront them. Instead, he pulled out his phone and called his sister, Rachel. "Ethan? It's late. What's wrong?" she answered, her voice filled with concern. "She's cheating," Ethan said, his voice hollow. "Clara, with Michael." There was a pause before Rachel spoke again, her tone sharp and supportive. "You need to get out of there. Come stay with me tonight. Don't do anything rash." Ethan agreed, driving to Rachel's apartment and spending the night on her couch. But sleep evaded him. Instead, he sat in the dark, replaying the years he had spent with Clara, the vacations, the quiet evenings at home, the promises they had made to each other. It all felt like a lie. A devastating discovery the next morning, Ethan returned to the house, unsure of what he would find. Clara was gone. The bed was hastily made, and her closet looked untouched, but the wedding photo on their nightstand was conspicuously missing. On the kitchen counter, "Ethan, I can't explain everything right now, but I'm leaving. I found someone who makes me happy, and I need to follow my heart. Please don't try to contact me. It's better this way." Ethan crumpled the note in his fist, his anger boiling over as he moved through the house. His anger gave way to determination. Clara had underestimated him. If she thought she could just leave and move on without consequences, she was sorely mistaken. The first clue that evening, Ethan logged into Clara's laptop, which he had carelessly left behind. She rarely logged out of her accounts, and within minutes, Ethan had access to her emails and messages. What he found confirmed what he already knew. The affair had been going on for over a year. The messages between Clara and Michael were sickeningly casual, filled with plans for secret rendezvous and inside jokes. But one email stood out. Subject: "Can't wait for our future." From Michael to Clara: "I booked the hotel for next weekend. Everything's falling into place. I'll handle Ethan. Don't worry about him anymore. I promise, our new life starts soon." But as he read on, curiosity piqued, Ethan began digging deeper. A hidden agenda. Over the next few days, Ethan uncovered a tangled web of deceit. Michael wasn't the successful entrepreneur he claimed to be. He was drowning in debt, and Clara had been helping him funnel money from Ethan's joint account to cover his losses. The realization hit Ethan like a freight train. This wasn't just about love. It was about exploitation. Clara and Michael had used him, not just emotionally but financially. But Ethan wasn't the type to act impulsively. Instead of confronting them, he began gathering evidence. Every email, every bank transaction, every incriminating detail. He documented it all, preparing for the moment he would turn their world upside down. The start of the plan. A week later, Ethan attended a networking event where he knew Michael would be present. He kept his composure, mingling with colleagues and feigning normalcy. When he spotted Michael across the room, laughing and shaking hands, Ethan's anger flared, but he kept it hidden beneath a mask of calm. "Michael," Ethan said smoothly, extending a hand. Michael's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "Ethan, good to see you." Ethan's handshake was firm, his eyes locking onto Michael's with quiet intensity. "You too. Let's catch up soon. I think we have some things to discuss." Michael nodded, his expression wary. He had no idea what was coming. The turning point that night, Ethan sent an anonymous tip to Michael's business partners, attaching some of the incriminating financial evidence he had uncovered. Within days, rumors began circulating about Michael's shady dealings, and his once polished reputation started to crumble. But Ethan wasn't finished. He tracked Clara's location through a mutual friend and discovered that she and Michael were planning to move into a luxury apartment together. Ethan smiled grimly as he formulated his next move. They had taken everything from him, but now he would take everything from them. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the trove of evidence he had gathered over the past week. Emails, financial records, bank statements, and text messages, all carefully cataloged and ready to be unleashed. His mind raced with possibilities. Clara and Michael thought they had left him behind, that he was broken and powerless. But Ethan had something they didn't, a plan. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposing the truth, ensuring that they couldn't continue to manipulate and exploit people. Michael's crumbling facade, the first cracks in Michael's carefully curated image appeared just days after Ethan's anonymous tip to his business partners. Rumors of financial mismanagement and fraudulent activities spread quickly, and Michael's name began circulating in whispered conversations. Michael was blindsided when he received a call from one of his investors. "Is it true?" the investor asked bluntly. "True? What are you talking about?" Michael replied, his voice steady but laced with unease. "The offshore account. The missing funds. We've been hearing things, Michael. If you're hiding something, you'd better come clean now." Michael stammered, trying to spin a web of lies to cover his tracks. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before the walls came crashing down. Clara's new life. Meanwhile, Clara was basking in her new life with Michael, unaware of the storm brewing around them. She had traded their quiet suburban home for a sleek downtown apartment, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows and designer furniture. But the cracks in her seemingly perfect new life began to show. Michael was irritable, constantly on edge about his business troubles, and the charm that had once captivated her was beginning to wear thin. "You've been distracted lately," Clara said one evening as they sat in their overpriced living room. Michael forced a smile. "Just work. It's a tough quarter." Clara didn't press further, but a nagging sense of unease crept into her thoughts. Ethan's counterstrike. Ethan's next move was precise and devastating. Using the evidence he had gathered, he crafted an email to Clara's family. He included screenshots of her messages with Michael, bank statements showing the siphoning of funds, and a heartfelt note about how she had betrayed him. The subject line was simple: "You deserve to know the truth." Clara's parents were devastated when they received the email. They had always thought highly of Ethan and were horrified to learn what their daughter had done. Within hours, Clara's phone lit up with angry messages from her family. "Mom, Clara, how could you do this to Ethan? We raised you better than this. Dad, you're throwing your life away for this man? He's nothing but trouble." Clara stared at her phone, her stomach churning. She hadn't expected Ethan to involve her family, and the weight of their disappointment hit her harder than she anticipated. A meeting with the lawyer. Ethan's next step was to ensure that Clara and Michael couldn't walk away unscathed. He scheduled a meeting with his lawyer to discuss the financial theft and how it could be used in the divorce proceedings. "This is strong evidence," the lawyer said, flipping through the documents Ethan had provided. "If we play this right, not only can we secure a favorable settlement, but we can also hold Clara accountable for the funds she diverted." Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. "I don't just want a divorce. I want to make sure they face the consequences of what they've done. The trap is set. Ethan's most calculated move came when he uncovered a detail Michael had desperately tried to keep hidden. Among the financial documents, Ethan discovered that Michael had forged Clara's signature on several questionable transactions, implicating her in his schemes without her knowledge. Armed with this information, Ethan arranged a meeting with Clara. "Why are you calling me?" she asked coldly when he reached out. "Because you need to hear this in person," Ethan replied. "I know everything, Clara. About the money, the lies. Michael, if you want to salvage anything, meet me tomorrow." Clara hesitated but agreed. A tense reunion the next day, Ethan and Clara met at a quiet cafe. Clara's usually confident demeanor was replaced with unease as she sat across from Ethan. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her voice defensive. "I want you to understand the mess you've gotten yourself into," Ethan said, sliding a folder across the table. Clara opened it and gasped as she saw the evidence. The emails, the bank transactions, and Michael's forged documents. What is this?" she stammered. "It's the truth," Ethan replied. "Michael's been using you, Clara. He forged your signature on these documents. If this comes to light, you won't just lose your reputation. You could face legal trouble." Clara's face paled as she absorbed the implications. "You're lying," she whispered. "I wish I was," Ethan said, his tone cold. "But you made your choice when you left. Now, you're tied to him, and he's dragging you down with him." Clara's doubts that evening, Clara confronted Michael, her fear and anger bubbling over. "Did you forge my signature?" she demanded, holding up the documents Ethan had shown her. Michael's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get those?" "Answer me," Clara shouted. Michael's hesitation was all the confirmation she needed. Her world began to crumble as she realized the depth of his deception. "I trusted you," she said, her voice breaking. "I gave up everything for you. And this is what you've done?" Michael's tone turned cold. "Don't act like a victim, Clara. You made your choices, just like I made mine." The dominoes fall. Ethan's plan continued to unfold. Using the financial evidence, he anonymously tipped off authorities about Michael's illegal activities. A week later, Michael's office was raided by investigators, and news of his shady dealings became public. Clara, now implicated in the scandal, faced questions from authorities and the public alike. Her once glamorous life with Michael quickly unraveled. Their luxury apartment was seized, and Michael's business partners distanced themselves from him. Clara was left alone, grappling with the consequences of her choices. Ethan's resolve. Meanwhile, Ethan focused on rebuilding his life. He had endured heartbreak and betrayal, but he refused to let it define him. One evening, as he sat in his newly redecorated living room, he reflected on how far he had come. The pain of Clara's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer consumed him. He had taken control of his life and exposed the truth about those who had wronged him. But Ethan knew this was just the beginning. Clara and Michael's downfall was far from over, and he was determined to see it through to the end. Clara sat in the dingy motel room she now called home, staring blankly at the peeling wallpaper. Just weeks ago, her life had been filled with luxury, excitement, and the promise of a bright future with Michael. Now, she was surrounded by uncertainty, her once glamorous life crumbling into ash. Michael had gone underground, avoiding investigators after his office raid, leaving Clara to fend off the fallout on her own. The media had latched onto the scandal, and her name was being dragged through the mud alongside his. Her phone buzzed with yet another message from a reporter, the 10th one that day. Clara ignored it, burying her face in her hands. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Ethan moves forward while Clara's world spiraled. Ethan's life began to regain balance. His quiet determination to rebuild was paying off. He had thrown himself into work, earning a promotion that put him in a leadership role at his company. His colleagues, once used to his reserved demeanor, now admired his sharp focus and growing confidence. "You're like a whole new person," his coworker Brian said one day over lunch. Ethan smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Sometimes, life forces you to change. The changes weren't just professional. Ethan joined a gym, revamped his wardrobe, and began socializing more. He wasn't trying to prove anything to Clara or Michael anymore. He was proving something to himself. A public humiliation, the final blow to Michael's reputation, came during an explosive exposé published in a major business magazine. The article detailed his fraudulent practices, painting a vivid picture of a man whose charm masked his predatory schemes. What caught Clara's attention, however, was a single line buried in the article. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Michael Marshall manipulated multiple women into financial entanglements, forging documents and exploiting trust to maintain his lavish lifestyle. Her blood ran cold. Multiple women? Had she been just another pawn in Michael's game? Desperate for answers, Clara tried calling Michael, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Clara turns to Ethan with nowhere else to turn. Clara made a decision she had been avoiding for weeks. She called Ethan. He didn't answer at first, but her persistence eventually paid off. "What do you want, Clara?" Ethan's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Please. It's important." "Important?" Ethan scoffed. "The last time you thought something was important, you left me for my so-called friend and drained our account." Clara winced at his words. "I made a mistake, Ethan. I see that now. Please, just hear me out." After a long pause, Ethan sighed. "Fine. Meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop on Main. Noon." The meeting. Clara arrived early, her nerves fraying as she sat at a corner table. When Ethan walked in, she barely recognized him. He looked confident, composed, a stark contrast to the broken man she had left behind. "Clara," he said, sitting across from her. "You have 10 minutes. Clara hesitated, unsure of where to start. I didn't know about Michael's schemes," she began. "He used me, Ethan, just like he used you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And that's supposed to make it better?" "No, but I didn't know how deep it went," Clara insisted. "I thought I was leaving for something better, but it was all a lie." Ethan's expression didn't soften. "You didn't just leave, Clara. You betrayed me. You betrayed everything we built together. And now you want sympathy because Michael turned out to be worse than you expected." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't expect sympathy. I need your help." Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms. "Help with what?" Clara hesitated before pulling out a folder. "Michael left these at the apartment before he disappeared. I don't know what to do with them." Ethan opened the folder, his jaw tightening as he scanned its contents. Bank statements, shell company records, and a handwritten list of names, likely people Michael had scammed. "This is big," Ethan said, his voice low. "If you turn this over to the authorities, it could seal Michael's fate." Clara nodded. "But I'm scared. If they think I was involved—" "You were involved, Clara," Ethan interrupted. "Whether you knew it or not, you're complicit. The only way to minimize the damage is to cooperate fully." Clara's shoulders slumped. I don't know if I can face it alone." Ethan's decision. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his apartment, staring at the folder Clara had given him. Part of him wanted to walk away, to let her face the consequences of her choices. But another part of him, the part that still remembered the good years they had shared, felt a twinge of compassion. Finally, he picked up the phone and called his lawyer. "I have something that could blow Michael's case wide open," he said. "And Clara might need protection." Michael's downfall. The evidence Clara provided was the final nail in Michael's coffin. Ethan worked with his lawyer and investigators to ensure that the documents were delivered to the proper authorities. Within days, news broke that Michael had been arrested while attempting to flee the country. The charges against him included fraud, embezzlement, and forgery, with enough evidence to ensure a lengthy prison sentence. Clara, cooperating as a witness, was spared any criminal charges. However, the fallout from her involvement left her isolated and disgraced. A moment of closure. A week after Michael's arrest, Clara showed up at Ethan's apartment. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. Ethan stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "For what?" "For helping me, even after everything I did to you," Clara said, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve it." Ethan nodded slowly. "You're right, you don't. But I didn't do it for you, Clara. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Clara blinked back tears. I hope one day you can forgive me. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Finally, he said, forgiveness doesn't change the past. But I've moved on, Clara. You should too. A new beginning. As Clara walked away, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The betrayal and pain she had caused would always be a part of his story, but it no longer defined him. That evening, as he sat on his balcony watching the sunset, Ethan allowed himself a rare smile. For the first time in months, he felt truly free. But deep down, he knew his journey wasn't over. There were still pieces to rebuild, lessons to learn, and a future to embrace. For the first time in months, Ethan woke up feeling lighter. Michael was behind bars, Clara was facing the consequences of her actions, and the chapter of betrayal that had consumed his life was beginning to close. But the road ahead wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rediscovery and growth. Ethan had spent so much energy exposing Clara and Michael's lies that he hadn't paused to ask himself what came next. Now, the opportunity to rebuild his life stretched before him, and he was determined to make the most of it. Reconnecting with himself, Ethan threw himself into his new role at work. His promotion gave him a platform to lead a growing team, and he quickly became known as someone who brought sharp insight and unwavering dedication to every project. You're like a different person, his manager remarked during a team meeting. What's your secret? Let's just say I had to learn how to adapt, Ethan replied with a faint smile. Outside of work, Ethan began exploring hobbies he'd abandoned during his marriage. He joined a hiking group, attended cooking classes, and even tried his hand at painting. The simple act of pursuing things he enjoyed without needing to compromise felt liberating. The attention of others, Ethan's transformation didn't go unnoticed. His newfound confidence and calm demeanor drew people in, and for the first time in years, he found himself enjoying social events rather than dreading them. At a friend's dinner party, he struck up a conversation with a woman named Lily. She was warm, intelligent, and refreshingly direct, a stark contrast to Clara's calculated charm. You've been through something heavy, Lily said after they'd talked for hours, her perceptive gaze meeting his. I can see it in your eyes. Ethan chuckled. Is it that obvious? Not in a bad way, Lily said with a smile. You're stronger because of it. I like that. Their connection was easy and natural, but Ethan held back. As much as he was drawn to Lily, he wasn't sure he was ready to open his heart again. Clara's struggles meanwhile, Clara was facing the fallout of her choices. The trial against Michael was fast approaching, and while her cooperation with the authorities had spared her from charges, it didn't save her from public scorn. The media painted her as a willing accomplice, a narrative that strained her already fragile relationships with friends and family. One evening, Clara called Ethan. I know you don't want to hear from me, she began, her voice trembling, but I need to say this. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. Go on. I've lost everything, Ethan. My reputation, my family, my friends. I've been trying to make amends, but no one will even talk to me, Clara said, her words laced with regret. That's what happens when you betray people, Clara, Ethan replied evenly. You can't expect forgiveness overnight. I know, she said softly, but I'm trying. I've started therapy, and I'm working on fixing the damage I've done. I wanted you to know that. Ethan paused. Part of him wanted to cut the call short, to dismiss her words as too little, too late. But another part of him, the part that still remembered the woman he'd loved before everything fell apart, felt a flicker of compassion. Good, he said finally. Keep working on yourself, Clara. That's all you can do. The trial against Michael was a spectacle, with the media covering every twist and turn. Ethan attended as a silent observer, his presence a reminder to both Clara and Michael of the lives they had upended. Michael, smug as ever, attempted to play the victim, blaming his actions on financial pressure and misunderstandings. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. When Clara took the stand, her testimony was both damning and revealing. She described how Michael had manipulated her, using charm and promises of a better life to pull her into his schemes. I thought I was escaping a stagnant life, Clara admitted, her voice breaking, but what I found was far worse. I've made mistakes I can never undo, and I'll carry that guilt forever. Her words resonated with Ethan. For all her flaws and betrayals, Clara was finally owning her actions. Michael's downfall. The jury deliberated for less than a day before delivering their verdict, guilty on all counts. Michael was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his fall from grace complete. For Ethan, the verdict brought a sense of closure. Michael, the man who had destroyed his marriage and tried to exploit his kindness, was finally paying the price. As he left the courthouse, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was over. A second chance. In the weeks that followed, Ethan allowed himself to explore the possibility of a relationship with Lily. She was patient and understanding, giving him space to heal while gently encouraging him to open up. One evening, as they walked through the park, Lily turned to him with a soft smile. "You've been through hell and back," she said, "but you're still standing. That says a lot about you, Ethan." Ethan looked at her, his heart full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without the people who supported me," he said. "People like you." Lily's smile deepened. "I'm glad I could be a part of your journey." Clara's final words. A month later, Ethan received a letter in the mail. It was from Clara. "Ethan, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted to thank you for everything you did, even when I didn't deserve it. I'm working every day to become a better person, and much of that is because of the example you set. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for, and I'll always regret how I treated you. I hope one day you find the happiness you deserve. Clara. ****. Ethan read the letter twice before folding it and placing it in a drawer. It didn't erase the past, but it gave him a sense of peace. Clara's words were a step toward redemption. Hers, not his. A new chapter. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan embraced his new life. He continued to grow in his career, deepened his relationship with Lily, and found joy in the simple moments that had once felt elusive. One evening, as he and Lily sat on his balcony watching the city lights, she took his hand in hers. "You've come so far," she said softly. "So have you," Ethan replied, a smile playing on his lips. In that moment, Ethan realized that his past no longer defined him. He had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but he had come out stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. Ethan's life had begun to resemble the peace and stability he thought he'd never find again. With Michael in prison, Clara working to rebuild her life from afar, and his relationship with Lily blossoming, it felt like the past was finally behind him. But life, as he had learned, rarely stayed predictable for long. The letter that changed everything. One quiet evening, Ethan returned home to find an envelope slipped under his door. It was plain, with no return address, and his name was scrawled across the front in an unfamiliar hand. Curiosity piqued, he opened it and found a single sheet of paper inside. "You think it's over, but you don't know the whole story. Clara and Michael weren't the only ones lying to you. Meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. in the parking lot behind the Riverview Cafe if you want answers. Come alone." Ethan's pulse quickened. Who could have sent this? What more could there possibly be to uncover? His instinct screamed to ignore the note, but the nagging thought of an unfinished chapter refused to let him rest. If there was more to this story, he needed to know. A dangerous meeting. The following evening, Ethan parked his car in the dimly lit lot behind the Riverview Cafe. The faint hum of streetlights buzzed in the background as he scanned the area for the mysterious sender. A figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a woman in her late 30s, with sharp features and an air of confidence that seemed to command attention. "Ethan Turner?" she asked, her voice low and steady. "Yes," Ethan replied cautiously. "Who are you?" "My name is Veronica," she said, handing him a manila envelope. "I used to work with Michael, and I know everything." Ethan opened the envelope and found photographs, bank statements, and a list of names he recognized. His eyes widened as he flipped through the papers. "What is this?" he demanded. "Proof," Veronica said. "Michael wasn't just running scams for money. He was blackmailing people, your wife included." Ethan's blood ran cold. Blackmailing Clara? For what? Look at the last page, Veronica said. Ethan turned to the final sheet and froze. It was a contract, a forged one, that tied Clara to one of Michael's shady business deals. But what truly shocked him was the date. It was from 6 months before Clara had left him. She didn't just cheat on you, Ethan, Veronica said, her voice cutting through his disbelief. Michael targeted her. He used her to funnel money through your accounts and threatened to expose her if she didn't comply. Ethan felt like the ground was slipping out from under him. Clara's betrayal, as painful as it had been, suddenly looked far more complex. Confronting the truth, unable to let the new revelations fester, Ethan called Clara the next morning. I got a letter, he said without preamble, and I know everything about Michael blackmailing you, the forged contracts, all of it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Clara spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to tell you, Ethan. I was terrified. Michael threatened to ruin me, to ruin us. I thought if I left, I could protect you. Ethan's anger flared. Protect me? By cheating on me and draining our accounts? I made terrible choices, Clara admitted, but I was desperate. I didn't know how to get out. Michael promised me freedom, and I was stupid enough to believe him. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. So you let me think you betrayed me because it was easier than telling me the truth? I didn't want to drag you into it, Clara said, her voice breaking. I thought I could handle it alone, and then it all spiraled out of control. Ethan didn't respond immediately. His emotions were a storm of anger, sadness, and confusion. Finally, he said, You could have come to me, Clara. We could have faced it together. I know, she whispered, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. The final revelation, Ethan hung up, his mind racing. But the mystery wasn't over yet. Veronica had hinted that Michael's schemes went deeper than just Clara. Ethan decided to confront the source directly. He arranged a visit to the prison where Michael was being held, determined to get answers once and for all. When Michael entered the visitor's room, his cocky smirk was still intact despite the orange jumpsuit. Well, Michael drawled, sitting across from Ethan. To what do I owe the pleasure? Cut the act, Ethan said sharply. I know about the blackmail. I know about the forged contracts. I want the truth, all of it. Michael chuckled, leaning back in his chair. The truth? You already know it. Clara made her bed, and I helped her lie in it. Ethan's fists clenched. You manipulated her. You used her fear to control her. Everyone has a price, Ethan, Michael said coolly. Clara's just happened to be her pride. Ethan's gaze burned into Michael. And what was mine? Michael's smirk faltered for a split second before returning. You were just collateral damage. Justice served. Ethan left the prison seething but resolute. He handed Veronica's evidence over to the authorities, ensuring that Michael's sentence would be extended and any remaining loose ends tied up. Clara, now fully cooperating with the investigation, worked to repay the funds she had siphoned and repair her fractured relationship with her family. But for Ethan, the real victory wasn't in seeing Clara or Michael face consequences. It was in reclaiming his life. A fresh start. Months later, Ethan stood on the balcony of his apartment, watching the city lights flicker below. Lily joined him, her hand slipping into his. You've been quiet tonight, she said gently. Just reflecting, Ethan replied. It's strange to think how much my life has changed in a year. You've come so far, Lily said with a smile. And you're stronger for it. Ethan nodded, the weight of the past finally feeling lighter. I've learned that sometimes the worst moments in life can lead to the best opportunities for growth. Lily squeezed his hand. So, what's next? Ethan turned to her, his smile genuine. Whatever comes next, I'm ready for it. Epilogue. A shocking twist. Weeks later, Ethan received a final letter in the mail, this time with no sender or return address. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of Clara and Michael at a party, their arms around each other. But the date on the photo was from 3 years before the affair had supposedly begun. Beneath it was a single line, You only know half the story. Ethan stared at the photo, his heart pounding. The past, it seemed, wasn't quite finished with him yet.